honestly, to do something that a lot of people thought that we couldn't do. I mean, what the comments and what people were saying after Whistling Straits about this decades of American dominance.
Rory Mcilroy just made a move nobody saw coming, and the golf world is buzzing. Fresh off the chaos of the 2025 Ryder Cup, he's now shifting gears in a way that might change everything for his career and his family. What pushed him into this new chapter? Today, I'll break down his latest move and how it stunned everyone. The shattering crown. The chaos began long before the cameras caught McIlroy trembling on the green, because his 7th Race to Dubai title didn't arrive as a gentle coronation. It slammed into the sport like a rogue wave. 1 second, analysts predicted a routine finale to a dominating season. The next, McIlroy was breaking past Seve Ballesteros' record, creating an earthquake whose aftershocks rippled across continents. The sports world had barely adjusted to the idea of him becoming the first European to complete the career Grand Slam earlier in the year, yet the man had just stacked another impossible chapter on top of the pile. Watching him stride down Jumeirah's earth course, the air seemed to hum with the inevitability that only true sporting theater can produce. But even inevitability has a sense of drama, and McIlroy delivered it in doses powerful enough to short-circuit social media entirely.
I'm extremely proud to be a part of this team. I'm extremely proud of every single one of the players, the VCs, the captain, all the backroom support staff. This was an unbelievable collective effort. As soon as we won in Rome, we turned our attention to trying to do something that everyone thought was pretty impossible to do, not just win in America, but win here in New York.
The Northern Irishman opened his final round with the swagger of someone being chased by ghosts and glory in equal measure. 4 under through 7 holes, carving through Dubai's desert wind as though he were rewriting physics. His rivals tried to latch onto the moment. Tommy Fleetwood firing sparks but never quite igniting, Rasmus Nergaard Peterson mounting a brief but doomed charge, and Tyrrell Hatton crumbling into a tie for 14th as if swallowed by the pressure of the occasion. Even when the playoff slipped from McIlroy's grasp, his season-long dominance roared louder than any single defeat. The statistical story was brutal. 5 Tour victories, historic Ryder Cup heroics, $35 million in on-course earnings, and now the crown that nudged him one rung below Colin Montgomery's once untouchable record. But the shock wasn't in the numbers, it pulsed in the raw humanity that spilled out of him. As he stood on that green, voice trembling, recounting his quiet conversation with Carmen Ballesteros before the round, it was as if the past and present had collided with violent tenderness. Surpassing Sev had always been a mathematical possibility. Feeling the weight of what it meant had never been guaranteed. The golfer, long caricatured as composed, polished, and almost too press-savvy, suddenly cracked open, revealing the messy, beating core beneath the trophies. And in that crack, just for a second, the sport glimpsed the emotional truth that made the victory not just historic, but seismic. Ghosts of Sev. But the story didn't end at the top of the leaderboard, because McIlroy's latest move wasn't just a victory lap. It was an eerie echo of a man whose shadow still haunts European golf. Every whisper surrounding the moment he surpassed Seve Ballesteros carried the same stunned undertone. Somehow, impossibly, the heir had become the torchbearer. The footage of him brushing away tears while recalling Carmen's words had already gone viral by the time commentators scrambled to contextualize the emotional explosion. And how could it not? The lineage was too perfect, the symbolism too sharp. Sev had built European golf's swagger. McIlroy had just secured its immortality. In the hours following the win, analysts attempted to sound unbiased while tripping over sentimental superlatives. They noted how McIlroy had borrowed Sev's flair, his Ryder Cup ferocity, his refusal to wilt in the face of American crowds. They pointed to the 2025 Ryder Cup performance where McIlroy, facing jeers fierce enough to rattle steel, played like a man possessed by a ghost with unfinished business. And then there were the parallels. The dramatic long putts, the emotional intensity, the ability to turn fairways into stages with spotlights that refused to dim. Even the younger generation, born after Seve's final years, began posting edits comparing their swings, their mannerisms, their impossibly dramatic arcs. Yet what stunned the world the most was not the statistical overtaking, but the spiritual inheritance. McIlroy had always spoken of Sev with reverence, but now his words trembled with something heavier, a sense that he had stepped into a legacy larger than himself. willingly, almost fearfully. Surpassing a childhood idol in cold numbers was one thing. Doing so with the lingering awareness that legends don't vanish when you pass them, they merge with you, was an entirely different emotional battlefield. This was the twist people didn't expect. The louder the accolades grew, the quieter and more introspective McIlroy appeared. As he left the Earth course surrounded by cameras, microphones, and a digital stampede screaming, there was a strange, almost cinematic contrast. Global hysteria colliding with the gentle, shaken humility of a man who seemed stunned by his own momentum. And the irony? The more humble he appeared, the more mythical the moment became, sealing the Sev connection in a way stats alone never could. This wasn't just McIlroy surpassing a legend, it was McIlroy carrying the torch forward with the kind of emotional weight only legends ever feel. Bethpage Rebellion. But before Dubai crowned him king, Bethpage had already baptized him in fire. His 2025 Ryder Cup performance had detonated its own brand of chaos, a defiant, electric surge that left American fans furious, European fans euphoric, and neutrals clutching popcorn as if watching a gladiator show. McIlroy didn't just contribute points, he ripped through the atmosphere of hostility as though feeding on the tension itself. The Bethpage crowd, historically loud but rarely volcanic, erupted into something more unhinged, hurling insults sharp enough to sting across oceans. And in the middle of it all stood McIlroy, jaw set, eyes blazing with the kind of righteous fury that turns athletes from competitors into symbols.
Day of what has been an extraordinary Ryder Cup, and an extraordinary Ryder Cup for Europe for so many reasons. 11.5 points to 4.5. The finishing line is inside for Luke Donald and his men. He will be urging no complacency, even with the scoreline what it is at the moment. They are on the verge of not just a victory, but perhaps even a record victory. That came 4 years ago at Whistling Straits when the United States won by 19 points to 9. If they were to win 8 of the 12 singles matches on Sunday, then they would surpass that total.
Europe entered the week with doubts gnawing at their confidence. Whispers about American firepower, chatter about European inconsistency, predictions of a home soil demolition. But then the first session scores flashed, 6.5 to 1.5 in Europe's favor. It wasn't domination, it was humiliation. Every putt that dropped, every fist pump shared between McIlroy and teammates, every silenced jeer fed a narrative that the Europeans were not just winning, they were orchestrating a rebellion. And at the center of the uprising stood McIlroy, delivering 3.5 points with icy precision and volcanic emotion, as if trying to burn a permanent memory into the American psyche. The tension mounted until it slid into the surreal. Beer cans flying, hecklers screaming personal attacks, and McIlroy firing back with the kind of pointed glare that could melt titanium. The viral clip, McIlroy, mid-round, barking, "Show some class," into the cauldron of chaos, became the unofficial banner of the tournament. And in a twist only golf's theater could produce, the more the crowd tried to rattle him, the more electric and unshakable his play became. Ryder Cups create heroes, villains, and folklore. McIlroy managed to become all three at once. When Europe clinched their 15-13 victory, the shockwave echoed beyond golf. The first away win since 2012 was more than a result. It was a narrative rupture, a public rewriting of American golf's home turf invincibility script. And once again, McIlroy found himself at the center, triumphant, exhausted, and somehow calmer than anyone expected. Bethpage didn't just strengthen his legacy, it hardened it, sealing him as the emotional backbone of a team that had walked into enemy territory and walked out with the spoils. Dubai may have crowned him, but Bethpage had forged the crown's metal. Fury on the fairway. The celebrations at Bethpage may have roared, but the shadows they cast were long, jagged, and impossible to ignore. Beneath the spectacle of Europe's away triumph simmered a darker subplot that stunned even those accustomed to Ryder Cup chaos. McIlroy, usually the picture of steely detachment in hostile environments, found himself dragged into emotional trenches no champion expects to visit. What began as harmless heckling spiraled into a spectacle of bile, chants slicing at his marriage, jeers aimed at his family, and a barrage of beer cans slicing through the air with drunken bravado. It was toxic, voyeuristic, and instantly viral.
As an only child, the support that I had from my parents, and they saw some potential in me as a golfer, and they give me every opportunity to try to fulfill that potential. And yeah, talking to them on the phone just after I won today, I mean, my mom probably still hasn't stopped crying at this point, but to have Harry on the bag, I have a, as you call it, a village, but it's a close-knit village, and it's pretty small, but everyone that's in there is, they mean an incredible deal to me. And I think as well to have Poppy there and to see, I want to make her proud.
The clip of a can grazing Erica's hat became an internet wildfire, the kind that ignites moral outrage and gleeful schadenfreude in equal measure. Cameras caught McIlroy's expression, sharp, furious, unfiltered, as he snapped back at a heckler with a glare that could have cracked concrete. The moment was messy, human, and completely off script, the kind of raw emotional eruption that makes sports feel less like a game and more like an arena where reputations are forged in fire. Fans debated whether he had lost control, missing entirely that this chaos was the exact pressure cooker through which legends often emerge. Even weeks later, the tension clung to him like smoke. At an event in India, McIlroy sifted through highlight reels with a strange sense of disbelief. The dominance was undeniable, every approach stuffed, every putt hunted, every European pairing sharpened by shared defiance. But the narrative had tilted toward abuse, not brilliance. He spoke about it with a strange mix of exhaustion and determination, insisting the world had forgotten the golf itself. The irony was brutal, a near-flawless European performance overshadowed by the ugliest theatrics of the American crowd. Yet in that bruising environment, something unexpected had crystallized. The insults, the adrenaline, the intoxicating hostility had welded the European team together with militant cohesion. The 12-5 lead heading into singles wasn't just skill, it was defiance, unity born from shared fury. McIlroy, in particular, seemed transformed by it. The once fiery kid had matured into something sharper, a leader forged not by quiet mentorship, but by surviving the storm and coming out more grounded, more self-aware, and more dangerous than ever. Dubai would capture the world's admiration, but Bethpage revealed the scars that made that moment possible. Apologies in the ashes. But even after the Ryder Cup dust settled, and the Dubai champagne dried on his shirt, the emotional residue clung stubbornly to McIlroy's 2025 narrative. The storm he'd survived on American soil demanded more than analysis and opinion pieces. It demanded accountability. Enter the unexpected gesture, a private, deeply personal apology from PGA CEO Derek Sprague, sent quietly yet powerfully to McIlroy's inbox. In a world where sports institutions rarely admit wrongdoing without a PR team clinging to the brakes, this letter landed like a white flag in the middle of a battlefield.
It's amazing. I had a conversation with his wife Carmen before I went out to play today, and she told me how proud he would have been, and yeah, it's I said this on this green last year to you. He means so much to this tour and to the European Ryder Cup team, and we rally so much around his spirit and his quotes and everything he meant for European golf. And to equal him last year was cool, but to surpass him this year, I didn't get this far in my dreams, so it's very cool.
The apology wasn't hollow. It acknowledged the incident directly. The beer can hurled at Erica, the venomous chants, the chaotic atmosphere that spiraled far beyond competitive tension. For a sport obsessed with decorum, the Ryder Cup's meltdown had become a stain, and Sprague's message attempted to scrub it clean. McIlroy later reflected on the gesture with an air of grateful surprise. He described the message as gracious, even lovely, a rare admission from a man who has spent years navigating friction with golf's leadership. The detail that Erica had past ties to the PGA added an almost poetic sting to the apology, an institution making amends with one of its own. But the apology did not erase the emotional toll. Clips showed Erica still shaken weeks later, her quiet presence at events contrasting sharply with the wild roar of Bethpage's crowd. For McIlroy, whose sternest battles typically happened between the ropes, this one hit different. Protecting his family had always been the silent backbone of his career. Watching them become targets in the crossfire of fan frenzy struck deeper than any missed putt ever could. And yet, in perhaps the most McIlroy twist possible, he reframed the ordeal as fuel. He claimed the abuse had only strengthened Europe's unity, that it turned their bond from strategic to spiritual. It was classic Rory, describing trauma with the tone of a strategist, repurposing pain into purpose. It stunned many not because it was unbelievable, but because it was precisely the resilience that had carried him through the year's relentless gauntlet. The letter may have attempted to tidy the mess, but the emotional debris lingered, quiet, heavy, and strangely human beneath the spectacle of his soaring success. The global gambit. And just when the world assumed McIlroy would bask in the comfort of his achievements, he detonated another shockwave, one not measured in trophies, but in intent. Fresh off his Dubai coronation, he revealed a plan that made traditionalists clutch their pearls. He would slash his events to 18-20 per year and take his talents global, in a travel pattern that looked less like a schedule and more like a world tour. While some players wind down after an apex season, McIlroy decided to redraw the map entirely. The reasoning? A cocktail of family priorities, competitive longevity, and a restless desire to perform before crowds who didn't grow up chanting his name. He invoked Justin Rose's late career durability as inspiration, noting that a decade more of elite golf required smarter pacing and fewer grinded-out weeks on the PGA Tour treadmill. The move stunned traditionalists who viewed the PGA Tour as the center of the golf universe, but McIlroy seemed unfazed, even amused, by the uproar. His message was clear: the sport was bigger than one tour, and so was he. Skipping events like St. Jude hinted at a larger shift. McIlroy was no longer adjusting his life to golf. Golf was adjusting itself to him. Tour executives fretted quietly about the optics, whispering concerns about loyalty and influence. McIlroy's response? A shrug, a smile, and a shrewd reminder that his contractual freedom gave him the right to choose. The move wasn't rebellion, it was evolution, a recalibration designed to keep him lethal for the majors and electrifying for emerging golf markets hungry to witness him in person. But beneath the strategic coolness lay another motivation: time. Time with Erica, time with Poppy, time away from the shouting crowds and camera flashes, time to breathe. The global shift wasn't just professional, it was personal, a softer undercurrent flowing beneath a hard shell of competitive decisions. His family's relocation earlier in the year, his growing emphasis on grounding himself between tournaments, all of it signaled a man who had rediscovered that longevity doesn't come from momentum alone. It comes from balance. By the time the news settled, fans were left with a version of McIlroy who felt both familiar and transformed, still hungry, still fiery, but more intentional than ever. The global gambit wasn't a retreat, it was a declaration. He's playing the long game now, and the world is his arena. In a year that ricocheted between triumph and turmoil, Rory Mcilroy didn't just stun the world, he rewired it. Between Dubai's glory, Bethpage's chaos, and a global future unfolding, he's writing a legacy that refuses to stay predictable. And if this was the just getting started phase, imagine the sequel. That's it for today. Make sure you are subscribed to the channel and don't forget to share it with your friends. See you soon.